Fate is all set in stone. You can't change how it ends.
Fala galera, Playdante novamente aqui na área. Sejam todos bem-vindos ao meu canal e hoje estamos aqui para fazer mais uma análise aí de uma das grandes promessas para esse ano, jogo esse chamado Wuchang Fallen Feathers. Eu acho que é assim que pronuncia. Jogo de gênero Soulslike desenvolvido pela Leasing Games, já com a sua data de lançamento prevista para julho deste ano e para todas as plataformas. Então, sem mais delongas, vamos para a análise.
Fate is all set in stone. You can't change how it ends.
I'm not gonna lie to you folks, when I hear the word Soulslike, my eyes start to glaze over and I imagine the sweet release of death. It's the same way I feel when someone says Metroidvania or roguelike. There's nothing inherently wrong with Soulslikes, Metroidvanias, or roguelikes for the record. There's just an awful lot of them. I love a good steak, but you can't eat filet mignon every day. Sometimes you need some sushi, a taco plate, hell, even just a burger. A little variety goes a long way. So when I got asked whether I wanted a 1 or 2 hour appointment with Wuchang, Fallen Feathers, I only signed up for an hour, but I was allowed to play for 2, and I'm really glad I did. Wuchang may be a Souls-like, but it's got unique ideas, and by the time I put down my controller, I knew I wanted to see more of what it has to offer. Wuchang Fallen Feathers sets itself apart from the jump with its unique art and setting. It takes place in the land of Shu during the latter part of the Ming dynasty. That single choice sets what I played of Wuchang apart from just about every other Souls-like. Most games in this genre aren't shy about their dark fantasy aspirations. In theory, that should mean everything looks a little different. In reality, that means most games look like Dark Souls, which means that most games really look like Berserk. I like Berserk, but it's not great when it looks like everything stepped out of one of Kentaro Miura's panels. Wuchang's dark fantasy, make no mistake, but its setting means a lot of what I saw looks and feels unique and colorful. The story's got an interesting setup too. You play as Wuchang, a pirate with a nasty bout of amnesia. In my demo, she woke up without knowing who she was or what was going on. Unfortunately for her, amnesia might be the least of her problems. You see, Wuchang has contracted a disease known as the feathering. It starts small. Feathers form on your limbs, but as the disease progresses, you lose your memories, go mad, and undergo a, quote, monstrous transformation. Unquote. There's no known cure, but that doesn't mean our girl is just gonna lie down. She's healthier than most, so she's going to look for a cure. The problem is, once most people realize you've contracted the feathering, they'll attack you on sight. It's a neat reason for why just about everyone in Wuchang, though not all, there are plenty of people still willing to help you, will attack you as soon as they see you. And the feathering isn't entirely a curse, it also gives Wuchang access to very powerful magic. Unlike most other Souls games, you don't have to equip or spec into magic for it to be useful, it just is. That's pretty slick. The other big thing Wuchang does is make each of its weapons unique. Each one is different in very subtle ways. The great axe in my demo could block, but parrying was a technique that was essentially reserved for a longsword. Other weapons didn't have either ability, opting instead for attack skills to lay on the hurt. And you can't just fire off those skills any time, either. Using them, aside from block and parry, which you always have, provided you've equipped a weapon with them, takes charges, which you build by pulling off perfect dodges or parries. Nailing perfect dodges and parries also charges your magic. Wuchang isn't quite as fast as Bloodborne, but it's faster than most Souls-likes and encourages you to be aggressive to build those charges. The dance is still here against bosses, and you shouldn't charge in blindly, but Wuchang is less about waiting for enemies to whiff an attack and punishing them, and more about forcing them to swing at you, building those charges, and then cashing in for big damage, either through weapon abilities, magic, or attacks that deal damage while switching to your other equipped weapons. It's a nice change of pace from traditional Souls-likes, and forces you to take risks to gain access to your best stuff. Even leveling up is its own thing. Instead of dumping points into your core stats, you fill out a skill tree for everything from your weapons to upgrading your flasks. If you want specific stats, you'll get them through the armor you equip. There's no shortage of outfits in Wuchang, from the traditional to the risque, and there's no shortage of fan service in Wuchang. But you're not just playing Fashion Souls or looking at core stats here. You'll always want to make sure you're picking the right resistances. If you're losing to enemies with swords, you might want some slash slashing resistance. Getting smashed by a big hammer, bludgeoning resistance is the way to go. Magic got you down, get some magic resistance in you. These choices matter, and I appreciate that your gear matters, even if I could have done without some of the fan service. There are still bonfires, here they're shrines, and resting at them, which in Wuchang is known as entering the dream, still respawns any enemies you've defeated. Even that, though, isn't necessarily safe. The first time I entered the dream in my demo, I was attacked by a large bird-like boss. I lost the fight that followed, but when I went back to the dream, the boss wasn't there. I couldn't tell you what the deal with that was, but it was interesting, and I kept wondering when, or if, I would get another shot at him. I didn't, but I'm interested in getting another crack at him and figuring out what that stuff is all about. Speaking of bosses, I did get to square off with 3 of them during my time with Wuchang, and none of them corresponded to the big dude in armor stereotype. From Software got that right with Artorias the Abyss Walker, and they, and many others, have leaned on similar versions of that fight since. Often imitated, never duplicated, as the saying goes. Wuchang isn't interested in sitting down at that table, though. Instead, everyone felt very different. The first was a masked man with a halberd. He definitely had a range advantage on my longsword and great axe combo, but that was fine with me. I wanted him to swing at me so I could build charges and then use my great axe to lay down the law. This boss took me quite a few attempts, mostly because I'd think I had an opening when I really didn't, and get cooked for trying to attack when it wasn't actually my turn. Once I got his patterns down though, I was building charges and spending them efficiently, dodging through his attacks and landing big swings of my own, and when I needed to back off, I could cover myself with magic. The second fight was against someone who seemed to have been transformed by the feathering. This was more acrobatic. The boss would leap into the air and attack from range, forcing me to time my dodges to avoid projectiles and keep from committing until I absolutely had to. I didn't find it nearly as hard as the first. It took me just a couple of tries, but I did appreciate the change of pace. The last fight, that last fight. Only one person at the entire event beat the final fight in the Wuchang demo, and I'm sad to say it was...
Ele falou aqui que uma única pessoa num evento que teve de gameplay que conseguiu finalizar o chefe, então deve ser bem difícil. Vamos continuar.
Wasn't me. While the other 2 fights were all about dodging, this one, against a woman wielding a sword, forced me to parry. Even with the right weapon and good timing, she was a difficult fight. Incredibly fast, aggressive, and damaging. Every time I tried to back off to heal, she was in my face. Even when I parried her successfully, I had to be careful. I often only had time for a single counterattack before she'd hit me again. It was a brutal fight, and I didn't win, but I appreciated how hard it was, and how I'd had to change my strategy for each boss. I can't wait for another crack at her from the comfort of my couch. And that sums up my feelings with Wuchang as a whole, really. I got a ton of time with it, far more than anything else I played at Summer Game Fest, and I left satisfied with what I'd seen, but I was also excited to see more. Not bad for a Soulslike, right? For more, check out our previews of Invincible Versus and Ninja Gaiden 4, and for everything else in the world of Soulslikes, Metroidvanias, roguelikes, and other video games, keep it here at IGN.
Não sei o que vocês estão conseguindo ver, mas os gráficos desse jogo aqui é sensacional. Sensacional. E ele lembra muito o Black Myth, o Wuchang, né? Que foi um grande jogo aí, que conta a história do Rei Macaco, né? No caso, a história do Predestinado, porque a história do Rei Macaco tinha sido passada antes. E é bem parecido. Esse estúdio que está desenvolvendo esse jogo é um estúdio chinês. Então, acredito que vai ser um jogo bem desafiador, aí cheio de grandes mudanças, grandes inovações, e vamos esperar o seu lançamento para poder estar trazendo aqui e fazendo aí a gameplay junto com vocês. Vamos continuar aqui. Então, galera, esse é o vídeo de hoje. Muito obrigado por terem assistido até aqui e se puderem se inscrever no meu canal, dar um like, já vai ajudar bastante. Estou aqui iniciando aí nesse universo das mídias sociais e vamos ver, vai dar muito bom, acredito, tenho fé e vai dar tudo certo. Então é isso, muito obrigado, até mais.